Good day, good day, good day, everyone. Hello, good to be here again. Thank you so much for, jumping on. Um, Thank you so much. Um, a big welcome to anyone who may be seeing this for the first time. Maybe somebody shared this with you, or maybe you saw the link and clicked it. Yeah, good to connect with you this way. I'm sure you're wondering who this person is. For those who may not know, my name is Laura Derikbibe. I've been putting some videos together to share experiences that I've had that I know have been supernatural, and that really speaks to why I have been doing these videos. This video really is to help anyone who, may be in that place where they don't really believe in the supernatural. They've heard about, and when I say that, I'm speaking to, God specifically, God, the creator of the heavens and the earth, right? The one who sent his son Jesus to the earth to die for the world, right? So that's what I'm referring to when I say the supernatural. So yes, this is for that person who is struggling to believe or struggling to trust God completely, because they're thinking, is there really a God? Should I really depend on this God? How easy is it for me to do so, right? For those who may know God to some degree, but primarily it is for people who do not believe, and they just don't believe. So I'm just sharing some encounters, experiences that I have had, experiences through which God has revealed himself to me, and that let me know without a doubt that yes, there is a God out there. And I know that if you desire this kind of experiences, you just need to speak to him about it, to surrender yourself to him and say, okay, if you're really a God out there, I choose to surrender to you. I want to see you at work in my life the way this lady has mentioned that you have worked in her life. And another thing you must do is you must search him out in his word. And when I say his word, I'm speaking about the Holy Bible, right? The Bible. That is where God has revealed all of, his intentions, or yeah, to a degree, all of his intentions, right? At least generally. By the time you now begin to walk with him in a love relationship, then he will begin to reveal specifics to you, specifics as it concerns your own life to you. So I've shared a couple of experiences, a couple of encounters. The last one I shared was about how I, had just finished university and I was moving on to a program that we had to do in the country that I come from. Every graduate, as long as you were under 30, you were assigned to a specific part of the country, and you could be assigned to a specific organization to serve. You were serving the nation, more or less. A lot of times you could come with, it would come with a stipend from the government, right? A stipend, well, different pronunciations. It will come with a stipend from the government, and then sometimes the organization you work with could give you something extra, right? That didn't happen a lot, but yes, it could happen in some instances. So here I was from my last video. I had miraculously been sent to the exact location in terms of the state where I wanted to, carry out this assignment, which is very rare, except, you influence it somehow through the back door. And I knew I couldn't do that because the Spirit of God had told me specifically, even when I was, with someone who I knew had the connections in that organization, were in the same vehicle, the same cab, driving home, and everything in me wanted to say, help me do this, but I was restrained by the Spirit of God. But miraculously, I got transferred to the exact location, the state I wanted to. And I had said in that video that my primary reason for doing that was because I had just started working with God. I had just come to know God, and I didn't want to get sent off to a location where I had to sort of start from scratch, not knowing what church to go to or who to. Not that God couldn't have directed me, right? But I guess God saw my heart, and this was just a heart that was hungry for him, and I needed to be in a place where I would stay connected to him. So again, miraculously, I got sent to the state of my choice, which is Lagos State, where I lived. I schooled in a completely different state. I schooled in the northern part of the country, and I lived in the southern part of the country, right? And then, I got sent to Lagos State, and the next thing was to go to a camp where we would be, the students would be kept for, I think it was 2 to 3 weeks. We would all be in the camp carrying out different activities. Then at the end of that camping period, they will now assign us to specific organizations, right? So there's another testimony around this. When we went to the camp, when we got to the camp, there were lots of students, lots of graduates from all over the country, right? And the officials, the camp officials, had said to the students, at some point we had to fill our data on a form. We had to fill our data on a form and include our residential address, right? So they had said to the students that, some people, the people who lived in that state, in Lagos, would have to come from home. They couldn't stay on the campgrounds. So if you lived in Lagos, you would have to come in from home, right? Now, for some reason, people who lived in Lagos really wanted to be on the campgrounds. So I know that, being on that campgrounds was like being away from home. You know how, young people want to be on their own. They don't want all the rules, that comes with staying at home, I guess. And, there were parties and all sorts of things that happened on the campgrounds. So people I knew who lived in Lagos were filling their forms and saying that they lived outside of Lagos because they wanted to stay on the campgrounds. Now, for me, I knew that was not even something I could do. Now that I started working with God, I knew that, falsifying information was a no-go for me, right? Now, the other thing was, I had mentioned in my previous video, was that the church I had just joined, that the Lord had just led me to, watch my previous video if you want that story, go to my previous video, right? The church that God had led me to, I tell the story again in my previous video, was having a conference in a couple of weeks. In fact, that week, the conference had started either that week or the next week. While we were going to be in camp, the conference was going to start. And I knew I wanted to be in that conference, and they would not let me off the campgrounds to be in that conference. It was like a 3 or 4 days conference, right? Like we would go there every day for about 3 to 4 days. So I was very glad, to be home so that I could attend the conference, right? So of course I filled, and even if that conference wasn't taking place, I would have filled my proper address and showed that I lived in that state and I could come in, into the campgrounds from time to time. So I don't stay on the campgrounds. I'm coming in from home, a couple of days in the week, right? And then my conference is going on. However, remember I said that at the end of the camp, the 2-3 weeks that we'll be on the campgrounds, we will get assigned to an organization to work in. You had the option to let the camp officials know if you had, gotten some kind of employment offer with an organization, share that information with the camp officials, and then they would assign you to that organization. If you didn't have an organization that had offered you, employment for that 1 year, then the government would send you off anywhere. They could send you to a school to go and teach. They could send you anywhere, right? And chances are that you will not get paid by that organization. It will just be the stipend that comes from the government that you will get, which was very little at that time. So when I was coming in from home, I had missed out on some organizations who had come into the campgrounds to recruit students. So I come into the campgrounds one day and a friend of mine is telling me about how, oh, did I get recruited by any of those organizations? I said, what organizations? He said, oh, the organizations that came to the campground to recruit fresh graduates. I said, whoa, really? Did that happen? He said, oh, yes. Oh, you missed that. Oh, that's too bad. So what are you going to do? Because, you know, those of us that got recruited are already giving our employment letters to the camp officials. And I remember what I said to the person. I said, well, I know that by the time, you know, I get assigned to the company I need to go to, one of two things would happen. I would either get the company that I really want to go to, or I would get a company that would be willing to let me go so that I can go to the company I really want to go to, right? And this was just because I was trusting that God, the God that I had, you know, been serving and, you know, that I went for that conference for, would show up for me. The same God that helped me to even be in Lagos State in the first place. Now, I said that to my friend, and I just, you know, basically I was just trusting God that it would work out in my favor. So a lot of students dreaded being sent by the government to like schools. Nobody wanted to go to a school to teach. Imagine, you know, coming out of school studying, you know, an engineering course, and you get sent to a school to go and teach God knows what, physical education or something like that. Anyway, most people wanted to go to organizations of their choice. Now, after I said that to that friend, I believe the conference started, I'm not sure if it started that week, but, you know, at some point during the conference, I remember I was praying. It was a Thursday morning. I think the conference started on Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, and then ends on Sunday. So it was a Thursday morning. I was praying and, you know, I just knew in my spirit, I believe it was the Holy Ghost that just said to me, take your resume along with you when you're going to church today. Take your resume along with you. I was like, oh, okay, that's interesting. Take my resume. So I did, you know, get a copy of my resume, put it in my bag. When I was ready to go to church, I went to church, and, you know, getting to church, I started, I got into a conversation with someone who was asking me. He knew that I was a graduate. In fact, that person has just moved to Canada too quite recently. I met him at the GO station a couple of months back. If he comes across this, well, I'm sure he knows himself. I don't know if he remembers this, but he was asking me when the choir, remember my last video, I talked about the choir? Yes, so this person was in that choir I mentioned. And he was asking, oh, do I have somewhere that I'll get, that I would serve, you know, an organization? I said, oh, no. I don't have anywhere. I'm just trusting God. They might just throw me off to teach somewhere, but I'm just trusting God for the best, right? He now said, oh, that this a particular bank was recruiting, and that this other person in the choir, in fact, these two people in the choir work with that bank, that maybe I should give him my resume so that he can pass it on to that person. I said, oh, really? He said, yeah, that when I'm coming to church, I should bring my resume the next day. I said, I have my resume right here with me. So that's how I gave him the resume. And, you know, he passed it on. Next thing I knew, I got a call to come and write a test for the, you know, for the, to write the test with the organization. And so I write the test that week. The week I write the test, that's the Saturday of the week I write the test, I go for choir rehearsals. So the conference ended, all went well. I wrote the test. The week I wrote the test, I go for rehearsals, and one of the other people, not even the person who he gave my resume to, one of the other person who worked in that bank saw me, and she was like, oh, I saw your name on the list. You got picked. And I was like, oh, really? And that was how, you know, I knew that the organization was offering me to serve with them for that 1 year that we had to serve, right? So we get dispersed from camp. I am given a deployment letter. I'm sent off to a church to go and serve. So I resume at this church, but before I resumed at this church, I had already received the employment letter from the bank as well, right? And the bank was going to pay me maybe like ×3 or ×4 of what the government was offering me. So I go to this church. I resume on the first day. I meet with my supervisor, and then I mentioned to my supervisor that, okay, that I actually have this other option, and they were going to pay me. Besides, where the church was, it was so far away from my house where I lived. It would take me hours to get there. And where the bank was so much closer to my house. So I speak to my supervisor and I say, oh, you know, I have this offer from this bank. Is it okay for them to write a letter to the NYSC officials? I'd mentioned NYSC is, you know, the organization that set up the camp and sends us off. National Youth Service Corps. That's what NYSC means, the government, really. Now, could he please let them know that, you know, I'm requesting to go to another organization. So the word that we would normally use in those days would be like, oh, can you reject me? He said, oh no, that they can't reject me because they need me. But the only thing they can do is to tell the organization that I have requested to be transferred somewhere else. But that's on me. I said, okay, no problem. Yeah, just, you know, give me that letter. So he gave me the letter and I took it to the camp officials. My goodness, I took it to the director. Well, I took it to the director's office, and then I get there, I meet these two ladies and I say, oh, I have a letter for the director. And they ask me for the letter. I give it to them. They look at the letter and they're like, what? What? You want to be redeployed to a bank? That is not even happening. I was young then. I was like, please, you know, I was pleading with them. And then they took me to go see the director, and they showed the director the letter. The director said, what? You refuse to stay there? I said, yes, ma, please. You know, this is going to pay me better. It's closer to my house. I would actually be able to build a career here. She said, forget it. Forget about it. She now writes a note. And she tells me, they give me a sheet of paper to go and make a copy of. They said, they gave me the sheet and said, go and make a copy of this and then fill it up and bring it. So when I took it and I was going to make a copy of it, as I looked at it, it said, you need to explain within a couple of days or so why disciplinary action should not be taken against you for not resuming at your primary place of assignment. And honestly, I just started crying. When I saw that, when I read that, I just started crying. I'm trying to keep this video really short. Anyway, long and short of it, they send me away. They do not accept the offer letter from me, from the bank. They told me to go to their office. So this happened on a Friday. The lady said to me, go to the office on Tuesday and pick your renewed redeployment letter. Oh, you want to stay close to your house? Well, there are a lot of schools in your local, you know, government area, in your vicinity. We will send you to one of those schools to go and teach. I was like, oh my goodness, no, that's not happening. By the way, teaching at that time was it's nothing like Canada or North America if you are in Canada, right? Anyway, I go home in tears. I'm thinking, oh, wow. You know, I was like, God, you know, I thought you were working all this out, you know, in my favor. Well, Tuesday comes, I go to the office, and before I leave, you know, praying that day, I just hear my spirit to take the employment letter with me. I'm like, why am I taking the employment letter? They already redeploy me, you know, to a school or something. Anyway, I do take the employment letter. And this is where it gets very interesting, guys. I take the employment letter, I go to the organization, and you know, I'm not sure what office to go to. So I see someone and I say, oh, I'm trying to get to this office. And the person says, oh, go right, turn, you know, they gave me the directions, all right? But I remember the first thing the person expected me to do was to go right. But honestly, for some reason, I find myself go left. I go left and I'm walking, and the first person I see is this lady. Mind you, this was not the same office I went to. Their own office was closer to where I was, the church I was sent to, which was so far away from my house. But this was like their secretariat, which was closer to, you know, where I lived, right? So I go there and I see this lady, one of the first two ladies I met from the director's office. And we're both in shock when we see ourselves. And she says, what are you doing here? I remember I saw her on Friday, so it wasn't too many days ago, and there was a lot of drama that day, so there was no way she could have forgotten me, nor I could have forgotten her. So she said, what are you doing here? I said, well, the director asked me to come here on Tuesday to pick up my new redeployment letter. She said, no, that I'm just bringing, see, this is the request in my hand. I'm just bringing it here, so it can't even be ready until Friday. I was like, oh, really? And then the next thing this woman says, she said, that stupid letter you were showing us on Friday, where is it? Where is it? I'm in shock, guys. I am terrified where I am. So I produced the letter, and then this woman bends down and she's looking for a stick. She's looking for something to use to clip my letter to the documents in her hand. So she finally finds a broomstick. For those of us in Nigeria, I know you're familiar with broomsticks. Maybe not those people, you know, who don't know. Sorry, if you don't know what a broom is, it's just a little stick. So she used the stick and pierced my own letter, pierced the documents in her hands, and, you know, sort of created like a staple pin or a clip. And she sticks my letter. In fact, as I'm saying this, guys, I'm still shaking. This happened like over 20 years ago. And every time I remember things like this, I am in awe of God. I cannot but, you know, stand on the truth that there is really a God, because that could not have, it was no coincidence. It was no coincidence. This woman bent down herself, found a broomstick, clipped my letter to her documents, and told me to come back. Maybe on Friday, so she just told me to come back. And by the time I go back, of course, you know what happened. Yes, I was sent to the organization I wanted to go to. Guys, there is a God out there who is watching over us. There is a God who is watching over you, who wants a walk with you, who wants to walk with you, who wants a relationship with you. Please, I need you to reach out to him. He wants you to reach out to him. His arms are open wide. I like to leave my, keep my videos under 20 minutes. Sorry that this is a little over 20 minutes, but I'm hoping that somebody will hear this. Somebody who hasn't believed up until now will hear this and begin to ask questions. Again, my email address is in my previous videos. Just go get it and reach out to me if you need somebody to talk to. God bless you. This God that we speak about bless you, even as you reach out for him. I'll be back again. I have so many more stories like this that only this God could have made happen. And I believe that he made it happen because of you, so that I can share it with you. And hopefully that will bring you to a place where you begin to search for him. And the Bible says that if you search for him, you will find him. If you seek him with all of your heart, you will find him. Yeah? God richly bless you. I look forward to hearing from that person. I'll be back with more videos. God bless you. Sorry, this got into almost 25 minutes. Sorry, it was this long. Yeah? God bless you. Bye now.